One of the most common bits of advice for writers is write what you know, and it's one that is very often misunderstood. This advice is something that you hear commonly when it comes to a new writer that's kind of curious and they want to get out there and flex their writing muscles and start putting some words on paper. And often the advice that a more experienced writer would give them is write what you know. When it comes to MMO RP, it's like I mentioned before, a lot of what we do is akin to writing. We do an awful lot of writing as far as custom emotes, say. When you are role-playing around a tabletop with your friends, you are more akin to having a conversation and acting when it comes to roleplay. As opposed to when you're on an MMO role-playing, is you are primarily writing. You are writing a shared experience with others, and so a lot of times writing advice can be very helpful to us. However, write what you know often becomes a bit of a hurdle for those who don't quite understand it. Write what you know is great advice when it comes to the idea of the author writing about something in which they have some experience that can be related to the reader. So for example, if you're writing a romance novel, ideally you have an idea about romance, you've been in some relationships to write a relatable experience. If you're writing about war, ideally you have some experience with history and studying kind of warfare and concepts like that over the years. If you're writing about a detective novel, ideally you have some kind of understanding of how detective work works. And you're able to write in a way which is relatable, because at the end of the day, people may not necessarily care about the fidelity of how you get everything right in your writing. They care about the relatableness of the story, how it connects to them. They care about that one-to-one connection between author and receiver. And when you're in an online game, role-playing with each other, it is a shared sender-receiver experience. Sends, receives, reacts, replies, receives, reacts, replies. Back and forth it goes. When it comes to role-playing anything you want, there's a couple things to keep in mind, and the first and foremost is that you don't need to necessarily have experience with whatever profession that you have your character doing. Some of you probably know that now I roleplayed in Final Fantasy XIV, but for a good long while, I was roleplaying Star Wars stuff in SWTOR, and had a lot of fun with that. My character was the chief mechanic and engineer for the entire guild. And the thing is, I have no idea. I don't know the first thing about mechanics or engineering, but my character, she was a very experienced engineer, the best of the best. And so what did I do? I simply used Google to understand some of the most basic of concepts about engineering, and so she handled in the guild, speeders and droids and starships, things like that, things which I don't have any understanding of. One thing that's very helpful is using Google to kind of get a basic understanding of what someone in that profession would have to learn and do. If you're writing about a scholar, understanding a bit about what it takes to become a scholar, and maybe what would be in that scholar's library, what kind of books would be on the shelf. And the thing is, when you are writing, and this is very important to remember, fidelity is appreciated when it's present, but what matters is the story. You see, when an author has experience with something, such as gardening, and they put that into their written work, a lot of people experience the fidelity that goes into the detail of someone who has a lifetime of experience gardening. It's very nice and very appreciated. However, you don't necessarily have to have that kind of fidelity to get it across. And think about, books like Lord of the Rings by Tolkien. We wouldn't have Lord of the Rings if he fully understood everything he's writing about, especially with fantasy. It would be impossible. It would be impossible for George Lucas to write about Star Wars if he could only write about what he knew. And that's a very important to remember, is that writing what you know is not a hard and fast rule. It's not necessarily a guideline, it's advice. Because it's not called don't write what you don't know, it's write what you know. And so it's good to know as much as possible so you can write what you know, if that makes sense. Well, if you're still here watching the video, let's talk about a couple ways in which you can frame it. One, frame it like an author would. If you're writing about someone who's a mechanic, think about the ways in which you've read a good book and where something was explained to you, but not necessarily into detail. Think about things that appeal to sight and sound and hearing and touch and taste, if applicable, and put that into your writing. A lot of times I did not go into detail about mechanics, but someone would want something done on their speeder or they'll create a droid or something, and they go into my character's workshop, and I'd write that she's standing there with her arms up, working on the engine block of a speeder that was overhead, hoisted up by a jack or a machine, and and she was working on a droid, and she would take a tool and stick it in the side of the droid and turn it, and the droid would light up. So think about it like that. Not going to the fidelity of it, but just kind of framing it as you would in a novel where you don't have to care about the nitty-gritty details. You truly can roleplay anything you want if you frame it that way. Using Google just to get some basic ideas about how something works, and using your creativity as a writer, because like I said, most MMO roleplay is writing. And so I'm going to show you just a little bit about something that I found helpful. You'll see. Star Wars is probably one of the easiest things to roleplay because there's just so much catalog by fans over the years. So, say I wanted to become a mechanic. I wanted to learn some of the tools that are used in Star Wars. I go over here into Google, search for Star Wars tools. Right here at the top, category tools. Click on that, and then I can just scroll through and take a look at everything that's here posted. Okay, let me see. A crate hook. Used by cargo loaders and roustabouts, or handles with curved blunted blades used to grab cargo. Okay, so crate hook. I have a little spreadsheet. I'm going to start typing in my spreadsheet. Crate hook. Used to hoist and move cargo. Easy. Go to the next. Another tool. A pinch jack. Use to pry open a wrecked vehicle in order to rescue a survivor. Pinch jack. Used to peel open damaged vehicles. Electro driver. Electro driver. And I'm putting parentheses. Droid. Used to assist in the movement of servo motors. Hydro shovel. Mentioned my character in Mos Eisley, so there's not much known about it, but you can kind of get the idea. Hydro shovel. Hydraulic powered shovel for long-term digging implementation. I don't know. It's made up. If I really want to, I can just make a list. What tools does a cardiologist use? A catheter, a guide wire, a stent balloon, a balloon, a stent. Catheter, stent, balloon. And you can do this with any kind of profession, just kind of learn about. And then, what are you going to roleplay about? You're not going to roleplay about, specifically how everything works. You're just kind of getting a general idea, a pool of things to pull from. My character would pull out the hydro spanner, put it on the vehicle, and turn it. People don't necessarily care about the mechanics. And if you go overboard with the mechanics, they're going to be bored out of their wits. Trying to roleplay you with that stuff. Whatever. I mean, do what you like, but this is a suggestion if you want to kind of learn how to roleplay anything you want. Anyways, I hope it's helpful to kind of give you some ideas to use. There's going to be a list on screen over there. If you want to check out some of the other roleplay videos I have, let me know if there's something that you specifically want me to look into. Maybe there's something that you want to know a bit more about that you don't hear discussed much. And if you have any ideas of your own tips, please go ahead and share them down in the comments below. And I'll see you next time. Subscribe if you want, I guess. Bye.